From the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast, this is AgDay.
Lots of sunny smiles in Texas.
And they're going to be really pretty like this for maybe 10 days.
What it takes to grow sunflowers in the Lone Star State. A new crisis at the border over safety inspections of shipments, why some are calling it absurd. As harvest kicks into high gear.
Everybody's trying to get to it as quick as they possibly can.
We hit the road to check out how things are going for Illinois farmers right now on AgDay.
AgDay, presented by Pioneer. What's next happens when blood, sweat, and tears meet rain, wind, and sun. Pioneer. What's next happens here.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Harvest is continuing to pick up pace across the Corn Belt. USDA reporting that now well over a quarter of the corn crop is harvested as we move into the middle of October. In its latest crop progress report, the agency saying 34% of the corn crop has been harvested. That's 3% ahead of the 5-year average. Now, when it comes to soybeans, a big leap forward. Now 43% harvested, up 20% from just a week ago and 6% ahead of the 5-year average. Cotton harvest now a quarter of the way done, just 1% ahead of normal, and winter wheat planting right on target. Now at 57% in the ground. That's right in line with that 5-year average.
The I-80 Harvest Tour on AgDay is brought to you by Case IH. The Farm Mall has been the iconic partner on the farm for generations. Come celebrate a century of Farm Mall, the one for all, at farmall100.com. And by AGI. At AGI, we spend a lot of time focused on our product details, making sure you can store your grain how you need to and move it when you need to. Learn more at aggrowth.com.
The 2023 harvest could be one of the fastest ever for some farmers in Illinois with the late season dryness. But despite growing conditions that mirrored past drought years like 2012, the crop is better than expected, as Michelle Rook found out on this week's I-80 Harvest Tour stop.
Farmers in Illinois have been pleasantly surprised with harvest results on both corn and soybeans. While they did face drought during the season, some timely rains helped them produce some big yields.
Illinois was hit early in the season with a flash drought covering 60% of the state. That included Matt Bennett's farm in central Illinois.
In the month of June, we were excessively dry. It wasn't super hot, which kind of helped us out a little bit, but excessively dry whenever we were setting the ear size. So we were a little bit concerned.
But then they received some timely rains during pollination and again in early August.
The amount of rain, I believe, was just right to kind of get us through. So what we found is the yields have been very good, very competitive with what our best ever yields are, but not best ever by any means. We're probably 5 to 10% off on both corn and beans.
He says heat also trimmed yield potential early in the season and then shut down the corn in late August, early September.
On corn yields, we've seen a lot of early yields in that 240 to 250 range, getting down into the 220 range on some later stuff, that's on a little bit lighter ground.
On soybeans, he says again, timely rains helped their early beans and pulled up their farm average.
Our early beans were awfully good this year. We're talking some 80s. We got into some of the later maturing beans and they weren't quite as good. But overall, the average is going to be, again, maybe 5% under 2022. So a very good year overall.
Bennett says the late season heat and dryness also pushed the crop to maturity and it's dried down quickly, leading to one of the fastest harvests ever on his farm.
We've had some beans down to 10%. Corn moisture content getting down into that 13-14% level. And the thing is that all the corn and all the beans is ready right now. And with all this heat, everybody's trying to get to it as quick as they possibly can
before standability of the crop becomes an issue. Georgetown farmer Doug Kirk says he too is in a dry pocket in east central Illinois with precip 10 to 12 inches below normal during this season.
Where the yield is coming from in the end, I don't know, but we got off to a really good start with our planting this year, and despite the lack of a lot of rain, we're coming out with one heck of a crop.
In fact, his corn is running well over 200 bushels per acre, which is 15 to 30 bushels higher than Kirk anticipated.
We were so dry this year and so hot that we really thought our corn was going to take it on the chin, frankly. So where farms ought to make 220, we thought they might be 200 plus or minus 5 or 10 bushel. But what we're finding is where farms ought to be 230 bushel the acre, they're making that, and in some cases more.
The only caveat is the corn is a bit light.
The test weight's off a little bit from prior years, and that's probably due to the short grain fill period that we had.
Kirk says his soybeans are also running about 10 bushels over their APH or farm average, and the quality is better than 2022 with the lack of disease.
We've only been in a couple of fields that haven't been up near record yields, well into the 80s.
Both Kirk and Bennett say many farmers in Illinois are experiencing the same results. So while statewide yields will be below last year's records, they're still exceeding expectations. In Illinois, I'm Michelle Rook reporting for AgDay.
And rain is now moving in on several key areas where harvest is ramping up. Meteorologist Matt Engelbrecht helps you plan ahead.
Yeah, we're talking about that harvest. Obviously, we want it to stay dry. The good news is once we get on the other side of this second low pressure system, because there's going to be two of them across the map, things will try and dry out. So let me show you what I'm talking about. This is Wednesday at 7 a.m. The other thing to keep in mind is with these low pressure systems, the number of lines that we see through a small area, the stronger the winds at the surface. So this is Wednesday at about noon. We start to see a warm front flare up back into Illinois, Indiana, even into Iowa and Missouri. So as that happens, we're going to get not only a line of showers right along that boundary, which means in terms of staying dry, north of the warm front, no rain, south of the warm front, no rain. Underneath that band that isn't going to move all that much is where we'll see initially some of the heavier rain come down across the United States. Again, that's Thursday at 2 a.m. Go ahead and take a look at your screen here, and there's some beautiful smiles coming in on this. This is Dave in Illinois getting a little harvest help. Dave says it was the best day of harvest, having his 87-year young mom in the combine with him. He says, after all, someone has to keep him in line. Great day for making memories. I'll have more on your forecast coming up.
The conflict in Israel's finding its way into global potash markets. The battle now disrupting operations at the Israeli port of Ashdod. That's a major hub for Israel's potash exports, which makes up about 3% of global supplies. Fertilizer makers across the world seeing an uptick in stock prices following the weekend surprise attack by Hamas. The stock price for Nutrien climbing 4%, with Mosaic and CF Industries up about 6%. Analysts from Scotiabank adding that if Iran, a significant nitrogen exporter, gets involved, it could cause supply issues in some regions. The war in Ukraine continues to take a toll on farmers there as new research shows more fields are being abandoned. New analysis from NASA's Harvest program was recently shared with National Public Radio. Now, it shows between 5 and 7 million acres of prime farmland has been abandoned since 2021. Now, the areas in purple are the ones impacted. That's somewhere between 6.5 and 8.5% of the country's total cropland. NASA says much of that fallow land is along the front lines, although there are some fields in some areas recently recaptured by Ukraine. Absurd. That's what Mexico's biggest trucking group is calling safety inspections right now at the U.S.-Mexico border in Texas. And it says the inspections are causing wait times as long as 24 hours, with lines that reportedly stretch for 14 miles. Canacar is the National Chamber of Cargo Transportation. It says over the past 21 days, it has recorded a backlog of at least 19,000 trucks that have not been able to cross the border. Bloomberg reporting on this, saying that Texas announced a renewed push for inspections last month as part of a plan to stop illegal border crossings and drug smuggling. When similar measures were taken in April of last year, there were protests and inspections were stopped a week later after Texas officials reached agreements with Mexican officials. Now, it's estimated $443 billion in goods, including ag products, crossed into the U.S. via Mexico ports of entry in 2021. Global headlines continue to deliver mixed results for commodity markets. We'll get the latest from Tuesday's trading round coming up next. And later, this farmer wants to brighten your day. A smile and a field of sunflowers are his tools of choice. We're off to the Lone Star State in the country. Crude oil futures back on the downward slide on Tuesday, pulling corn right along with it. Michelle Rook is back with a closer look in Marcus Now.
Grains mixed on Tuesday with corn and wheat lower, soybeans higher. Jim McCormick with agmarket.net is joining us. And Jim, we made new lows for the move in soybeans and then ended with a higher close. Was that just some short covering activity or report position, or what was going on?
I think part of it was technical. They tried to take out the near-term lows. They did it in the night market, ran out of sellers, reversed back up. They're easing a seasonal trend in both the soybeans and the meal. That would suggest you kind of should be looking to look to buy the beans here as we reach the midway point of harvest. So that might have attracted some buying in the beans as well.
Corn market, though, setback. We've been unable to take out the $5 mark, although we tested it. So have we seen a technical failure in that market, or was the market just following wheat on Tuesday?
I think the lead dog was definitely the wheat. The wheat was under pressure pulling the corn down. But the reality is, Michelle, the corn market yields have been overall relatively impressive. We do have the report out later this week. And, I think the average trade guess is for the crop to be a little bit smaller. But the reality is we talked to a lot of our clients. They've been very pleasantly surprised with the corn yield. So maybe a little bit of risk off in front of that report as well.
Jim, are you at all concerned that we may see a little adjustment in yield on corn, maybe up instead of down?
I am concerned about it right now because I think in general, Michelle, a lot of producers are underhedged by all accounts. So a bearish surprise would put the market under pressure. Now, we do have the insurance still protecting us a little bit, but the market's kind of talking a bullish report, but I think it could be bearish, unfortunately.
Yeah. And did we just see some technical selling pressure?
100% technical right now. I think they failed at the 20-day for multiple times. They did it again here on this last move up, and that's causing a technical correction. On the fundamental side, the United Nations is trying to work with Russia to maybe get this grain corridor open again. I don't know if that's going to go anywhere, but maybe that added a little bit of negative on top of the technical selling.
All right. Thanks for joining us. As always, that is Jim McCormick, agmarket.net, and we'll have more Ag Day coming up.
To contact Jim McCormick at Ag Market, call 844-4AG-MARKET or visit their website at www.agmarket.net. Ag Day is brought to you by Advanced Acre RX from Winfield United, the comprehensive, customized program that's paying off at operations across America. Visit winfieldunited.com/AARX.
So as I mentioned, there's going to be 2 low-pressure systems across the United States. I want to kind of pull apart the precipitation estimate through Friday at 7 p.m. We'll have a warm front draped in and across the United States attached to a low-pressure system back out here to the west. That low is going to be, again, that first one. The second one is going to sneak up through the Gulf of Mexico and impact the southeast with a substantial amount of rainfall, about 3 to maybe even up to 5 inches of rain. Similar situation in terms of rainfall totals being pretty impressive through Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday from Iowa into Wisconsin and southern Minnesota with some contours painting about 3 to 5 inches, maybe a little bit more than that. That is right along the warm front. The low pressure system is back here towards the west, and that eventually is going to work to the east. So through the weekend, we're going to be tracing some showers counterclockwise around the center of that low. Again, that's the one up here, not the one that's down here. So it's going to be more tropical in nature. Precipitation outlook, once we get on the other side of this system, both of them this weekend, things start to dry back out between October 15th and the 19th into Minnesota, Minneapolis, Wisconsin, but also down into the southeast. Now that's going to come on the heels of a decent soaking as we just saw. In terms of what's going on in the jet stream, you got, we'll call it the smiley face. You got the eye here, the eye there, and the smiley face right down there. Now, what that means, I don't know. This is the first time I've ever used a smiley face analogy to grab the jet stream pattern. But you got an upper level low. The bowling ball is going to stay right there with another piece of energy coming down from the northwest. So what that is going to do, increase the winds back down here to the south, and then rain is going to wrap up in and around that low Friday and into the weekend. Different story south of there, Texas, Oklahoma, into the southeast. Once that tropical system, that weak tropical system gets into the Atlantic, we go almost zonal with high pressure and quiet conditions. Let's talk about the Delta. Isolated thunderstorms in Utah, high around 72 degrees, low of 39. Snow possibly in higher elevations. Little windy in Delta, Utah, high around 57 degrees. Do you know what the next city is going to be? Clarksdale. Mostly sunny, high around 80 degrees in Mississippi.
Smithfield says it's closing its pork processing plant in Charlotte, North Carolina. It says it plans to transfer production to its Tar Heel facility in the state. The company says the closure will mean increased efficiency and better use of existing capacity. Now, Smithfield says it will provide financial and other assistance to the 107 employees impacted by this closure. Some may be transferred to other locations. Now, the final production day at the Charlotte plant is scheduled for December. Smithfield employs more than 10,000 people in North Carolina and nearly 40,000 people across the U.S. Mexico right now is fueling U.S. pork exports. New numbers from the U.S. Meat Export Federation show that August exports totaled over 226,000 metric tons. That's steady with last year, and export value fell 1.5%. The leading market remained Mexico, which is on a record pace right now and set a value record in August at $211 million. It also reports exports are trending higher year over year to Japan, Canada, and Central America. Now, through the first 8 months of this year, pork exports were 11% above a year ago's pace. Now, if strong exports aren't enough to make you smile, how about this? A field of sunflowers in Texas. We'll meet the farmer behind this sunny field of flowers next. It's impossible to see a sunflower and not smile, and so there are lots of smiles growing from the black soil of North Texas. The Texas Farm Bureau shows us how one farmer has been growing seeds of happiness for years.
I could succeed as a farmer without growing sunflowers, but it's just fun to watch them grow and to watch people stop and take their pictures and enjoy them. As long as they respect the field, I don't have any problem with that. My name is Scott Bourne. We're just east of Ferris, Texas in Ellis County. I farm about 4,000 acres in Ellis, Dallas, and Kaufman counties. I rented this farm when I was 28 years old. They were taking bids on it, and so I just threw out a bid and somehow I got it. 32 years later, I've still got it. Well, you know, it turns out that this area is a pretty good area to grow sunflowers. I think it kind of surprised people at first. In a year where, you know, corn or cotton may not do as well, the sunflowers may end up being pretty good. The first year that I grew sunflowers was in 2013. We were growing them for the oil seed market, but these last 4 years we've been growing them for the bird seed market. Same sunflower, but if you're growing for the bird seed market, they have to be black. Doesn't make any difference to the birds, but the people won't buy them at the store if they're gray. Generally, if you plant them in April, they're going to be blooming in June sometime. So it takes a little over 2 months probably before they start blooming. And they're going to be really pretty like this for maybe 10 days. We're expecting them to yield really well this year. The sunflowers are very heat tolerant. They're pretty drought tolerant too. You know, if you've got some good subsoil moisture, they don't require just a whole lot of moisture during the growing season to make a good crop. We use an Italian-made header that's really specifically made for sunflowers. It's a Fantini. They do a really good job of not losing any heads. We're usually trying to make a yield of about 2,000 pounds to the acre. But most of the contracts you get, they're only committing to buy 2,000 pounds to the acre. Sunflowers is kind of unlike other crops, whereas, you know, you can grow wheat or corn and then you can just start calling people and you can take it here, you can take it there. Sunflowers really aren't that way. You probably shouldn't grow them unless you have a contract with somebody and a buyer set up to begin with. I think a lot of people are under the misconception that farming's a lot easier and requires a lot less knowledge and thought and experience than it really does. I can't make a seed germinate. God has to do that. I can give it its best chance to. You know, we do our little parts in it, but there's so much of it that we don't control. So much of it's really just in God's hands, or that God designed these plants to do. Even these sunflowers just amaze me that, you know, all of this yellow can somehow come out of black dirt. Just being able to have the privilege to watch that, to just have the sense that, you know, I'm providing stuff for people that need it. There's just a lot of satisfaction in that. My hope for the future of this farm is just that I can continue to operate it as long as God allows me to. I really have no plans to retire, and so as long as I'm able to work and to help my fellow man, and I hope to be able to do that, you know, as long as God lets me to do it, and I hope it's many years to come.
Our thanks to the Texas Farm Bureau for sharing that story. And before I go, I want to give a quick shout out to the New Prairie Cougars 7th grade volleyball team from Northern Indiana. Now, these young ladies went a perfect 18-0 this season. That's my daughter, the tall one there in the back. They only lost 2 sets all year. Now, their little school sits smack in the middle of farm country, corn and cattle all around. Nice job, team. I'm one pretty proud dad. And that's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. From all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day out in farm country.